Hello and welcome to another episode of the High Growth Leadership Podcast by Blair West with me, David Blair.
And me, Simon West.
So we were very privileged today to have Victoria Lynch as a guest. So Victoria founded Additional Lengths. For those of you who don't know, Additional Lengths supply hair extensions, hair products and accessories to both trade and direct-to-consumer customers. Phenomenal success story as a business, really shining light for the Northeast. From base in Teesside, the business has scaled from Vicky's parents' bedroom, where she founded it, to today, where they are investment-backed. They turn over 22 million and make a profit of £6 million.
And really, really refreshing to hear from a female founder who created a product from the industry that she sort of worked in her early career. And I think there's just a sort of authenticity and straightforwardness with which she described all the different stages of growth and all the relationships with the people that have helped her along the way. I think make it a really engaging listen.
Absolutely. And in terms of kind of inspiring other entrepreneurs, the discussion's got everything that you would hope to find. So kind of real passion for her product, incredible level of self-belief, incredible resilience, energy, pace, drive, overcoming obstacles, and getting other people to believe in the business as much as she did. So it's right up to the current day, having an investment partner and growth partner.
Selling in 50 countries globally now.
Yeah, absolutely. The benefits of working with a really inspiring chair, perhaps at one point cynical attitude that Victoria had about working with an investment partner, contrasting that with the really positive experience she's had. Some really, really good stuff in there. So we hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
Absolutely.
So hi, Victoria. Welcome today to the High Growth Leadership Podcast. And,
Hi.
Thank you very much for making the time to join us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. So you can tell the Additional Length story a lot better than us. So if you wouldn't mind starting by just telling us about what Additional Lengths do and the markets you serve.
Okay. So I started Additional Lengths back in June 2003 after being a hair extensionist for 11 years previously to that. And it was a time where extensions weren't popular. Not a lot of people knew what extensions were. But I was starting to be asked to teach people and hairdressers, and I thought,
So when was this approximately?
This
I don't
was
want to
around
age you, but when was this?
2000, about 2000 to 2001, people were starting to ask me to teach them how to do it. And I just thought, I'm going to start having some competition here. I was just working out of a little room in my parents' house. So then I thought, do I really want to stand here for another 11 years? Absolutely not. What can I do next? And I thought about things that I was missing out of from a product and a client perspective, especially around their needs and requirements. Could I look to fill the gap? I felt as though there wasn't enough out there from a supplier point that could really deliver what I needed. And I just thought, I'm just going to bite the bullet and create my own products. So then that's when I had to think of a name, a company name, a brand name. I thought Additional Lengths was perfect. And I took some time to research suppliers, manufacturers over in the Far East, done a little bit more research from a manufacturing point, and literally from me saying openly to friends and family that this is what I was going to do, 6 months later I had a business and I was operating because I just got my head stuck down and
Phenomenal.
done it.
So when you said that you decided I'm going to go and create my own product, I mean it's a short sentence, but it's a huge leap. And lots of people would think there might be a market out there or might be an opportunity out there, but they wouldn't take that step to go, and I'm going to go and do it. So just interested to know, within your family, within your friendship group, was there a history, a pattern of entrepreneurship? Did you think that was possible? What gave you the kind of the push to do that?
My mum and dad had a mobile shop and ice cream van business when I was younger. So they worked for themselves in that sense, but it was a local business. Even though I was only servicing the local community still at that point, my vision to sell and distribute products that I could make in the future could have went beyond that local capacity. So whilst I had some, not necessarily guidance, but inspiration that you can do things if you really put your mind to it, I think beyond that, it was just all dreams and aspirations that I wanted to personally deliver.
And in those early days after you'd bitten the bullet, were there any moments in that first 6 months where you questioned whether you were doing the right thing?
Yeah. And I answered that really quickly because after I found a supplier, I had some samples. I got my first shipment in. My second shipment, actually, I was sent inferior goods, and it wasn't real human hair. And the money that I'd generated from the first round of sales was what paid for that. So there was no cash sat there. Everything was just reinvested back into itself. So that was a massive setback. And I had to just think fast, what do I do with these products that I can't sell as human hair that I'd been advertising? So I used them as training pieces for when I was developing the education courses. And I sold them buy one, get one free. So I recouped what they'd cost me, and then obviously moved on and had to start again, research development, new supplier contacts. It was an absolute minefield. And obviously, let's not forget, back then, we didn't have the internet in the same capacity that we have now.
Yeah.
So the opportunity for people to explore ideas and business dreams or do whatever they want is a lot easier nowadays than it ever was back then. So the
Particularly
challenges
that your
were
model
huge.
included an international supply chain from the start.
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
international supply without the internet as we have it today.
Yeah. We couldn't even send bank payments in the same way. So we had what was called a letter of credit. And we had to fill out a form and take it to the bank, and it was scanned, and the money was held in an account until the goods arrived in the UK. Now, the minute the goods arrived, those funds were then sent on to the factory. So a letter of credit was proven from the bank that the funds were there to be paying for the goods. But we didn't get to inspect them.
Okay.
So if I had have inspected them, that would have obviously saved that cost. So the challenges around
Painful lessons early
streamlining
on,
different
yeah.
services was just really, really challenging back then.
And in those early days, did you have any sense of the scale of the opportunity? Because I imagine that when you started off and you were doing that hair extension work, you were working and serving a local community in the Northeast. How did you get confident that there was a business that could be truly scaled beyond that local market?
I'd always sort of focused on 5-year increments because realistically, I don't think anyone knew back then how the world would develop to where we are now. And you can only probably, it's more realistic to think in short-term stages, especially from a growth and aspiration point. But it's brilliant that it has developed this way, but we've seen the biggest growth across the whole sector in the past 5 to 6 years, not just with hair, but with beauty, aesthetics and fashion. People are now spending more money on themselves than they ever have, which is great for a lot of industries. But I think 20 odd years ago, I didn't ever imagine that would be here where we are.
But you had a plan for those first 5 years?
Yes, yeah.
So what was the ambition at the end of the first 5?
It was to deliver everything that the other companies weren't delivering, or open up new target audiences and making it more flexible to needs and knowledge and education. Because to work with trade professionals, my goal was to service the trade sector. I started out targeting consumers because you just needed to build that awareness and reputation. And then that developed into where we service the trade sector 80% more so than the consumer market. Yeah.
And what was the initial response to your product then? You designed your brand, you sell to trade, took it to market. What was the initial feedback? Did you have a good early feeling that, this is a product that's going to make a real difference?
Yeah, quality had always been key for me. But even back then, product types and variations were still very limited. So as a brand now, we have the biggest product range available from a technique and application point, as well as the biggest extensive colour range as well. And I think back then things were limited, but I was the first company in the UK to sell a stick tip. And I think the difference, which is
you
you won't understand.
Simon and I, a stick tip is
a stick tip or an eye tip or it's basically an attachment with a ring.
okay.
So you would either weave extensions in back then or glue them in. So the glue even back then was still a fairly new technique.
Yeah.
And that was brought in and like come in ideas from America and things like that. But the ring method was originally created in Korea. And it was called the Embo ring, and I was the first company and brand to ever sell that in the UK.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it went on to overtake glue-in methods because it became more sustainable, more reusable, safer on the hair as well from an application point, especially if somebody didn't know what they were doing. A ring can be opened and adjusted, so once adhesive solidifies, that's it.
Yeah.
It's firmly in place.
Yeah. So as a hair extensionist yourself, that ability to kind of smell what the customer wants and where the trends are heading, and kind of first-hand experience of the application and the quality and the difference that the new kind of product innovation made, that left you perfectly placed to build a.
Yeah.
Of course, you need the bravery to go and do it. But
yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to test and learn a lot of things, because even when I started, I was so young. And then I was doing hair extensions before I actually went and gained my hairdressing qualifications. But I felt like that was really important, because if you're delivering a product or service to a trade professional, you have to be singing from the same hymn sheet.
Okay.
And the way that you talk, the terminology that you use for different services, understanding of techniques, cutting techniques, colouring services, restoration, scalp, the hair health and scalp health, everything like that. You have to understand that in order for you to really deliver and have confidence in what you're saying, because otherwise they're never going to buy from you.
Yeah.
You don't just buy the product, you buy from the people as well.
Yeah.
And obviously the reputation goes a long way to support that.
And you were just saying as you arrived today, you still look after some of your clients, still on the tools, as it were.
I do, yeah. Once a month, I hit our salon and I still service some of my old hair replacement clients that just don't want to move to the other members of staff. So I do enjoy it. It impacts my time because I'm very busy. But I love it. I think it keeps my fingers in the game.
Yeah.
I get out of the office environment as well, and I'm back in somewhere that I love.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that back when the business started, there wasn't the same sort of opportunity to scale through online and through the internet. You know, in 2024, there's all sorts of consumer brands and services that pop up and go viral really quickly. How did you back then create the sort of awareness and engagement to help the brand grow in the early days?
To get it, well, I did get a website made, but it wasn't an e-commerce one, because you couldn't even buy from websites back then. I don't think you certainly couldn't.
It's amazing, that, isn't it?
I think that was it was sort of up and coming. If you could buy from websites, there were literally huge corporations that had the manpower and experience to implement them. But it was basically just a information website that with a phone number and a contact page for emails, and all orders were processed manually. How did I target trade professionals? Well, I had to go down to my local library and I sat with the yellow pages from Newcastle to Sheffield, and I went through every single page in the hairdresser section, and everyone that paid for a box advert, those were my targets. So I wrote them down by hand because we didn't have laptops. I would have had to sit with a typewriter. So basically it was a notepad and pen. And I went back home. I remember getting a PC from Staples, actually. It was £1,400. It was only like a 2 megabyte. Back then, that was brilliant. When PCs weren't even in the homes.
Sorry to interrupt,
but I literally done everything.
Our first guest on this podcast, on our first episode, was a gentleman called Simon Moyle, and he started his career by working in Staples or PC World, selling laptops and PCs to business people. So that's a nice circle. That he may well have sold you that PC.
Maybe, but it was when there were just used for the world of business. They weren't in homes.
Yeah.
There weren't personal devices that have now become an extension of us. Everything was very, very hands-on. And I suppose once you understand that you will always roll your sleeves up and get stuck in. This is why founders and entrepreneurs and CEOs just continue to do that, because they've worked every single role in the business. At some point, we're wearing all the hats across it.
Yeah. How I mean, we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but when you got to the scale where you weren't no longer doing everything, how did you find that transition to kind of to guiding others rather than just roll your sleeves up and do it yourself?
I think the biggest challenge when you've worked on your own for so long, especially up until I started the business, and then for the 2 years before I took anybody on, is learning to delegate, because it's such a controlling mechanism personally that you find that probably the most challenging. And you don't realise the benefits when you're offloading that pressure and workload and sharing the responsibilities from a workload point of view, of how beneficial that is personally. But that's something that you just continue to learn to develop over time. As you scale up, you hire more.
Who was your first hire?
My first hire was a young girl that I got on a YTS through the council, because we had to be approved through the council if you had a business operating from home.
Okay.
So there was different policies in place as well back then that are probably very different now. I couldn't even tell you what the rules are now. But yeah, and that was because I fell pregnant with my first child, that I knew I needed to think about. I had a business, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And so that was sort of like the encouragement to jump in at the deep end there. And I mean, I say that I was only off 3 days.
Yeah.
I only had 3 days maternity. That's just what happens.
That's what happens when you open
that's
your own
what
business.
Happens, yeah.
And you mentioned before when you had that minor disaster with the second shipment of product, that was funded by the sales from the first shipment. So, I mean, the work effort and application to start a business is hugely challenging, but then the funding, I suppose, is a separate challenge, particularly when it goes well, straight when there's demand out there for your product and you think, I need more of this. How did you approach that? Where did you turn to for some funding support?
I initially went to the bank and I got turned down. They said that my business idea was not viable to support me. They clearly didn't see the passion and drive that I went into that room with. So I thought, what do I do now? I had £5,000 of my own money that I'd saved from an accident that I'd had, and a payout, just had it tucked away for a rainy day. And I thought, I'm going to use that. But I obviously that was money for stock, but then I needed so much other investment to get going. So I went along to the Prince's Trust in Middlesbrough.
Okay.
Met a lovely guy called Ray Crawford. He was the manager at the time. And he just sat there, remember now, just him sat there with a big grin on his face as I was like waffling on like 100 miles an hour, not shutting up. And I had this business plan in hand that I didn't even know what a business plan was. I created it myself. And I went along and he was like, I can really see you mean business with this. And I was like, well, I know it's going to work. I'm telling you it's going to work. I just needed somebody to believe in me as much as I believed in myself.
Did you basically say the same things to Ray as you did to the bank manager?
Yeah. Yeah.
But one's response was, yeah, great, glass half full, optimism, let's go.
Yeah, and the difference with them is Ray, not knowing what hair extensions were, he was interested to learn about what they were. The guy at the bank didn't even, because he didn't know this is not a business. This is not a product that people need. He couldn't foresee the future trend.
Where is that bank manager now?
I have no idea. The Prince's Trust then offered me an interest-free loan of £1,500 and I got a grant for £500. I also went to the Five Lamps as well, and a guy there, Bill Erskine, he secured me a £500 grant as well. So in total, I started the business with £7,000.
Okay. And I know, you've spoken to us previously about it, that you still retain that kind of gratitude and warm sentiment towards the Prince's Trust, and that relationship's gone full circle now, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. Just more recently, I have now signed up as an official ambassador for the Prince's Trust.
Brilliant.
So I'm making some investments into the trust over the next 4 years. The first one's already been made, and I've chose specifically for that investment to be spent and invested in women in business in the Northeast area, and hopefully generate the next generation of successful females in the Northeast.
Excellent. Fantastic. So you mentioned that when you first launched the business, it was a relatively new market, a new product, and that you had some challenges in terms of convincing third parties, whether it be the bank, to believe in that market and believe in you and the product. To what extent do you think you, as a female founder with a product for a female consumer market, was a particular barrier to overcome there?
I think looking back, I didn't recognise it at the time because it wasn't as obvious, or I hadn't had conversations that were making me consider the position that I was in as a young female. But if we look back reflectively, over 20 years ago, business was very much a man's world. And then I think about the conversation that I had at the bank, and that non-understanding of that male bank manager that just didn't understand what women wanted, what I was trying to offer, what I was trying to create. And I feel as though now, that's probably one of the biggest disadvantages back then, where women weren't seen to be leaders in business, or women weren't seen to be founders, or women can't do this. And even so, the disproportion of women leading now, even today, heading up some really big corporate companies, is the disproportion there is way off.
So the role that you've taken with the Prince's Trust can hopefully help to address that moving forward.
Yes, and that's why I've specifically signed up with the Women Support and Women Enterprise part of the Prince's Trust, just to give, because I think there's so many disadvantages in some sense outside of the business area, where some women are single parents, they've got kids at school, want to find and create something that can work around their personal time without other impacts. I was lucky that that wasn't a thing for me, because I started the business before I had a family. So I feel as though, it was a huge disconnect in views, but back then I didn't see it. It's only when you reflect back and think, well, actually, that's what was happening.
I mean, we've touched on previous podcasts with other guests that still some of the statistics around female founders looking to raise money, whether it be from venture capital or PE, they're pretty shocking, really, in terms of the success rate. So there's still a long way to go. So having examples like yourself of people who've huge success, all those practical challenges, but also for a long time had kind of investors crawling all over your business wanting to invest, and have found a very supportive partner. So really inspiring.
Yeah, and I never thought about that side of it, women and men, because I've stayed in my own lane. I do what I need to do, and I've never really had those personal challenges as such where it's been an impact for me to remember. But I was at an event last year actually, and I was up for an award, and somebody told me that was part of the organisation, that somebody had made a comment, and it came from a man that had said, "I hope she doesn't win it. She's just a hairdresser." And I was like, "What?" Somebody said that, recently. "I hope she doesn't win. She's just a hairdresser." I said, "I'm beyond more than a hairdresser. I'm a local employer. I'm a successful female entrepreneur. I've done so much for the local area as well, service in the local area." And I just thought, wow, I couldn't believe it. I went, I don't even want to know who said that, because that's just their ignorance on not knowing me or what I've done or what I've achieved and what I've dedicated my life into getting where I am now, which is why I was entered for the award in the first place.
Exactly.
So, I was like, wow. And that's probably been my only memorable point that I felt that discrimination as a female, because it's never been, if it's not out of sight, out of mind, do you know what I mean? I've probably had it in other ways, but
That's the first
I'll
time
never
it's been in
forget
your
that.
face, yeah.
I'll never forget that, which makes me even more now wanting to support
Determined,
those
yeah.
that feel it out there and feel that pressure where they don't need to feel it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So I said before, we are jumping ahead there. So,
Yeah.
so you've got the that cash to start the business. You've designed the product. You've got your yellow pages. You're ringing around.
Should we explain what the yellow pages are to people who are younger than us?
Yeah, there's probably people, but maybe people watching this don't even know what the Yellow Pages is.
Just a big yellow book full of businesses in alphabetical order.
So you're calling them. They love the product. You understand the market. From there, was it a gradual kind of increase in performance, or do you look back at key step changes in the business at certain points where you're like, oh, that was significant. We really took off then?
It was very slow in the beginning because there wasn't that demand for the product back then. And now like I say, the personal investment into appearance and confidence is huge in more than just hair. And sometimes people don't know they need it until they have it and think, oh, I need this. And just like with any type of beauty treatment, it becomes addictive.
Okay.
So once you have it, you take it away, you're like, no, I need that back. And I think as well in hair salons, because this wasn't part of the normal hairdressing curriculum, because there wasn't that trend or demand for it, then nobody knew that they needed to offer it as a service.
Yeah.
So it was never, it's part of the hairdressing sector, but it was still very separate in some sense.
Okay.
So it was just
Would
about...
your typical hair salon have the capability, would they have a hair extensionist?
They would now, but back then, no.
No, okay.
It would have been a specific dedicated service, that they would need thorough education on.
Okay.
You couldn't just do it without knowing what you were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in those times when it was a little bit slower or the growth didn't come right at the beginning, how did you stay confident in the idea that you had? Because you talked about the meetings you had with the Prince's Trust and everybody else and the passion that comes across for it. How did you retain that even though it was hard to persuade other people to buy into it?
I think personally, you have to be 100% optimistic at any stage. Even if things are going wrong, you have to turn that negative into a positive for your own peace of mind. So the challenges you have to overcome, and it's just how you navigate, how you do that. So going back to obviously the second shipment, it's thinking about like, okay, this has happened. You can't change what happens. How do you flip it into a positive? So, sorry, say the question again exactly.
No, just saying about how you retained confidence in the idea and in the business, even though, all the salons didn't have hair extensionists and the adoption of it was slower maybe at the start than it's obviously been in more recent times. How do you stay confident and true to the idea?
And did you have a waiver?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, at any point, most people can chuck the towel in, but again, optimism and knowing what they need before they need them, and how popular I'd been as a extensionist locally, I was ahead of the curve, so I could foresee that trend come in. So it was just a case of banging that drum and keep banging it until it literally gets into the minds of people.
Yeah.
So I've probably seen trigger points happen, like I say, every 5-year increments. And then I could probably attribute that to how the business position at the time. Then I moved out of my parents' spare room into my first salon stroke store. And that retail space can really elevate the business in more ways than one. You then need to look at more staff, and then those staff are talking, and then it becomes like word of mouth again. A lot of it locally, but back then was word of mouth. And people were searching the internet more so. If you were the only business that could service them, no matter where they were in the country, they were picking up the phone and placing an order over the phone with you. So that repetition and that momentum just started organically building in the background. And the business has grown organically for the past 20 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And it's always been trigger points. I feel as though, do you know, when people talk about your environment, you don't realise how much that can impact you until you move out of that fishbowl effect into scaling up into bigger premises that you can house more stock, house more people, and just look at that.
Do you think that makes a difference to the people that you work with as well? Does that elevate everybody's, as you stepped up each time? And did you feel a sense of momentum and everybody stepping up and thinking this is really going somewhere?
Yes and no, because some people don't like change.
Okay, yeah.
Sometimes I was one of the worst ones for change, especially if you're you get comfortable, complacency can set in at any point, and things are going well and you're growing. You think things are actually okay.
Yeah.
But could they be better? Could they be bigger? And that all relates to your environment. And change is risky, but business is about risks. You have to just take the bull by the horns and make these decisions. And if you feel confident that that is going to be a success, there's only thing stopping you is you.
Yeah.
You're only holding yourself back by not taking these risks and making decisions to actually look at what that scale-up opportunity is.
Yeah.
Our biggest turning point in the last 5-6 years was probably our move to our warehouse. So we were in the previous property for about 14 years.
Okay.
And that was like a 4,000 square foot store that had our distribution, that had 2 basements, that housed all our stock. And things were going well because we were growing. But what you don't realise is you're only as big as the walls around you. We couldn't house any more stock. We then used
that must be enormously frustrating if you feel like there's lost demand out there. There's people who do want your product, but you
can't
can't
out of stock items. So if you've got items out of stock, you're losing revenue straight away.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we identified about two years before I moved that we needed to move. Yeah.
I imagine for an entrepreneur, we all know how hard sales are to come by. So I think that's probably the most frustrating loss, where you know the demand is there, because you have to do a lot right to get to the point that people want your product. And therefore, if it's a supply capacity operational issue that's limiting the growth of the business, I imagine that's enormously frustrating. Yeah.
It is, yeah. And obviously there's 2 different business models. You've either got a service business, which is just time, or you've got a product and service. And if you're not getting the revenue in, how do you replace the stock when you've got all of the other expenses as well?
Yeah.
So there's loads of challenges along the way, but stay positive throughout every hurdle. That's just what I've done.
Yeah. It's funny just reflecting on what we've discussed about that kind of early period there. And I suppose none of this is necessarily new, but it's really, interesting to find to hear that experience in your words, that to the success of the business built upon really deep understanding of the customer market, because you worked in it, bravery to go and put your life savings into it, so risk taking, then unbelievable self-confidence to go and convince other people that about a market that they didn't know anything about, that there was going to be a really big market there, and then resilience to keep going and be positive even if the going was quite slow along the way, or you got knockbacks like that. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
So then once, I suppose, jumping ahead to when the business has scaled and it's a successful business with lots of customers, I suppose the next challenges do come, as you've touched on already, is building a team around you and delegating and leading others. When you look back, it's a theme of this podcast is high growth leadership. When you look back at your leadership style, once you had a successful business, has that changed and evolved over the year? Did you go into that with a clear idea of how you wanted to lead people? Did you go to people for advice, or was it all just kind of gut instinct and innate the way you approached it?
I didn't really have many people to get advice from, but naturally I've just always been a go-getter. So I would think about what I wanted to do and just get up and go and do it. I wasn't really one for strategic plans, documents, paperwork, meeting notes, anything like that. at the time, depending on the size of the business and where you are, those can be time constraints that you don't need, especially when there's only you really leading it.
Yeah.
And I felt as though at the time in a growing business, to keep positive relationships with the people that you employ as well and keep their skin in the game, they have to see that energy and investment from you as an individual. There's a lot of people out there in business that when success comes in so many ways or at certain levels, they step back a little bit too early, and then your people that are really there turning the cogs and oiling those daily feel a little bit disgruntled, and that was something that was just never me.
That's really
So the
interesting.
energy that I've put into the business, I think it's really important to lead by example, and that energy and time that you invest for your employees to see that and recognise that, they get right behind you. And I truly believe that's probably why I've got a really good staff retention rate, and I have a really good relationship with my team. Like, some of my team have been with me 15 years now.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they've seen what I've
What you've
invested
put in,
personally.
yeah.
And I haven't expected more from them
Than you were willing to
than
do.
what I was willing to invest myself.
It's fascinating because that's in, leadership literature is described as the pace-setting leadership style. So I'll go out there, I'll run harder, I'll work harder, and everybody follow me. And I think that a lot of leadership literature and lots of coaching and mentoring encourages leaders away from that style and kind of says it has a level that it'll take you to, but you can't run the hardest forever. You'll burn out. It can't take a business beyond a certain point. You need to find other ways to lead and enthuse and motivate people.
Certainly a lot less fashionable.
Yeah,
than it used to be,
Yeah.
That's a nice way to put it.
And that is one of the challenges with scaling up, because it gets to a point where you've got so many employees now in different areas, different departments.
What's total headcount now in the business?
Around 40
Okay.
now, and we've got another 5 to recruit over the next few months as well. So that we're still in a huge scale up position at the moment, but the difficulty is time.
Yeah.
We've all got the same 24 hours in a day,
Can't make any more
and
time.
the bigger your team become, the more disconnected you become from individuals where you've had really good, strong relationships in the past. And it's difficult to try and maintain them as much as you try as much as possible. But they understand how busy you are and what you do put in. They see you here, there and everywhere, the late nights, the early mornings, the time away from home. And this is what people need to see and recognise. They don't just want to think, oh, Vicky's out the office again, where is she? They want to know, and they want to know what's going on in the business.
Yeah.
So I think communication is key there.
Again,
But
I think that's really
equally-
interesting. We run a much smaller business, but I think that when your business gets to a scale that you bring in, you hire people. So there's now kind of a 2-tier hierarchy, and you have to delegate. That is a challenge, but you're delegating to people that you are directly working with and managing, and this can be really rewarding that you spend a lot of time with them. You feel like you just touched on, you know them really well, and you've got a deep relationship with them. Then when you get to the next level and there's another layer comes in, I personally found that challenging, that there's then people in the business who you don't have that much direct interaction with, and you're now kind of attempting to lead via somebody else. It's a whole new kind of challenge.
Because then you've got like line managers of departments, other directors in the business managing those areas, and obviously what their roles and responsibilities are, and then you're managing them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference in leadership, where you've got founders and entrepreneurs that are still very much invested in working in the business versus somebody coming in or managing or leading what is like a corporate business in a sense. And those are two very different people and personalities. And I don't want to change from who I am, because it's who I am.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can change really, because then you're pretending.
And it's been enormously successful. So.
Yeah. And I think it's just navigating a new direction of the business, but equally, no matter where you are in that journey, you've got to accept that this is the change and it has to happen, and it's happened for positive reasons, not just for you, but equally for the team that work, like the whole workforce in the company, really. So I think once you learn to delegate, that's the biggest challenge. That then feeds into where you are now, to understand that all change isn't bad. Change is good, but the key is to work with people that work well with you. Find the right people that you can work well with, because that's the biggest challenge when it comes to people.
Yeah.
So you mentioned time, obviously limiting factor for all of us. Now 40 people in the business, you can't do everything anymore. What do you spend most of your time on these days?
Emails, communication, product development, content, the salon,
You said at the very
meetings,
start.
board meetings,
Podcasts.
everything. My weeks are my diary is crazy now for weeks and months on end.
Do you have a sense of what feels like a really good week and what feels like a week where you get to the end of it and you feel a little bit dissatisfied?
No, but most weeks I'm glad at the end of the week, because I feel like by a Friday I can breathe a little bit, that's for sure. I do enjoy the weekends, but I still very much thrive off what I do.
Yeah.
I've still got my energy there for it, and I think you need to just keep that drive and passion alive. Otherwise, you'll start failing in every aspect of it. So what one of the main things is that I've learned to do now, more so in the last 12 months, is say no and be honest. Like this, I don't mean this in a bad way, but if you aren't worth my diary time, you don't get it, because that's so valuable elsewhere, and I've got to prioritise my diary, whether that's work, family, anything. And there's a lot of balance. There's still a disconnect imbalance with that. That I'm still navigating and learning.
I think a lot of people,
Yeah,
ourselves included, could live in guarding your own diary more. It's very easy to say yes, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad I've now got an assistant. So I've only had an assistant since January, can you believe it? And I don't know what I'd do without her now.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was even the biggest thing, because having a personal assistant or an exec assistant that then is a stranger in some sense, comes in and has to learn so much about you personally, the ins and outs. They now know more about me than some people that are close to me.
Yeah.
They know where I am, what I'm doing, how I think, what I expect, what I need, do you know, they've just got
It's really
everything
key
covered.
person, isn't it? Yeah.
It's like, wow, that relationship is just phenomenal that you build with somebody.
Did you struggle with, I suppose, thinking this, we have never made that hire, and that there's two factors at play. One's a bit of imposter syndrome, where you think, who do I think I am, hiring a exec assistant? And the second is trust, thinking there's a lot of control in that role, and they've got a lot of control over my diary and my communication with all of my clients, all of my suppliers, all of my, how did you find that?
I feel like you have to get to understand the person and personality in those initial stages. It's not just a straight interview, you're hired. That is a process that happens over a period of time, meetings and get-togethers and another interview, and you've just got to be really happy and confident that you've made the right choice, and I'm glad that I did in this occasion. And I think trust is the biggest thing, because it's not just about them having access to your trade secrets and how you've created the business and your suppliers and things like that. It's they know everything, top senior level, board level, that nobody else in the business would know, because they're there doing all the communication for it and reading emails and making all the arrangements and taking the minutes in the board meeting. So even though they're not part of the senior leadership team, they are very much involved.
You mentioned before change and attitude to change. So I wanted to touch on two big changes for the business. So one, for the majority of the business's life, it's been a B2B2C model, selling to trade professionals who obviously then service consumers. But then you made a decision at some point to launch your own consumer brand, which is a significant step for the business, and to sell direct to consumer. You talk us through that kind of decision-making process. And I think there's, we have other clients who are B2B2C and considering direct-to-consumer as an alternative model. Was that something you put a lot of thought into? Was it a long time coming?
Well, Additional Lengths is the consumer side of the business, and the trade side is Remy Cachet. So that's the other brand, the number one trade professional brand for the industry. And that's locked down strictly to trade professionals. You can buy certain products on the Additional Lengths, but Additional Lengths is now becoming a storefront. So it's not just about our brands on there. We stock third-party brands as well, just to service the whole consumer market and deliver everything under one roof from a hair point.
How do you go about selecting? Sorry to interrupt. How do you go about selecting those other third-party brands?
It's based on product quality, performance, results, delivery of what they can deliver for users, basically. That really aligns with my core values from a product quality point. And this is why Remy Cachet was born. Because Additional Lengths, when I started that, it was very much a budget brand, because that's how I had to start the business. And I think 8 years down the line, when I wanted to create something more direct to trade professionals, they just wouldn't have had that conversion from Additional Lengths. So that's how Remy Cachet was born. So it's understanding your audience, really, and how you can market and tailor and create that awareness for them. That's a trigger point for them to buy from you.
Yeah, okay. And then I suppose the second big change was the decision to take on an investment partner, in growth partner, which was in
It was December 22, so we're coming up to 2 years soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for listeners, growth partner or a consumer specialist investment partner. They partner with founder-led consumer businesses. It's the investment vehicle of Richard Harpen, who founded HomeServe very, very successfully, and has a team of investors now working in the consumer sector. So it's finding an investment partner. Really interested to hear what point you started first thinking about that, what your attitude to that was, when you made a decision to do it, how you came to pick growth partner as your investment partner.
Well, over many years, I'd been contacted by a number of private equity firms to sell the business, and it was something I was never, ever interested in, because I just feel as though there was the thought and value of the business. It just wouldn't have grown if it wasn't me at the helm of it. And I was always conscious of that. I knew I still had so much to go and deliver myself from a performance point, especially from like a global success point of view.
So how early did those first PE approaches come?
Just via email or phone calls. One actually came to visit me from America and asked me outright, would I be interested in selling the business to them? And I said no.
And how many years before Growth Partner became your investment partner?
That was about 4 or 5 years, I think,
okay,
if I can remember. Yeah, about 4 or 5 years. And I didn't want to be controlled by somebody that didn't know what to do or how to do it for the UK audience. And I suppose, being honest, I didn't want to be told what to do, if you know what I mean, by somebody that then... I'd worked for myself for so long. I think that was a bit alien to me. And I knew that
I think there'll be lots of entrepreneurs out there with exactly the same mindset. It is a big decision, isn't it?
It's a huge decision, especially when you lose those reins and you could feel as though you were banging your head against a brick wall when you know what's right and somebody's telling you, no, you can't do that. Because I feel as though the minute you put profits before people, it's just a recipe for disaster. And that's what I wasn't going to allow to happen to something that I'd put my life into building. And I knew there was still so much for me to go.
Yeah.
And we're still a long way off. We're still even jumping off the ground now. Not even touching the ceiling yet in terms of that global growth and success. So when Growth Partner come along, they didn't reach out to me directly. They got in touch with my accountants. And then my accountant said, Vicky, I think maybe have a just open your door to these, have a conversation, because they're very different. They're not private equity. And I know how you feel about that. So why don't you have a conversation? And I had a conversation with them. The guys come to meet me at the office. I learned a little bit more about who Growth Partner were. The man behind the scenes, Richard, done a bit of research into Richard. And I just thought it actually takes an entrepreneur and a founder to really understand an entrepreneur and a founder. And I feel as though that's what I found in Growth Partner. Not private equity. I'm still very much in charge, leading the way. And I felt as though at that point, my forte was hair and products and industry. To scale the business to a position where I wanted to take it, I didn't have that personal skill set and experience where I'd worked in other businesses to learn from somebody above me. I hadn't worked under anybody that I could learn from or be coached by anybody that could really help me take the business to that next level. So that's the reason why I wanted to explore more with Growth Partner and hear what they could offer.
And you were cash rich at this point.
I was cash rich.
You could fund the growth, didn't need the cash. Yeah.
The business didn't need the investment from a finance point of view. But I knew we needed the investment from a people and an experience point of view. And that's the reason why I then partnered with Richard and his team at Growth Partner.
And how's it been? Has it lived up to expectations? Has it been what you did expect?
Yeah, it's been absolutely great. And even though, you know, it's for the right reasons, until that day where it's like completed, the deal is completed, it's like, you still worry. It's like, oh, is this the right thing? But I can honestly say, hand on heart, I'm so glad I did it. Yeah. There's a little bit of a de-risk opportunity there for me.
Of course.
But now I'm still influencing the business. I'm there sharing my ideas and direction, how we should tackle certain sectors, certain territories. We have a lot of meetings and planning, and we end up coming back around to what that idea was. But at least I'm not doing that with the burden on my shoulders that I made a wrong decision.
Yeah, there's potentially a loss of some control, but there's also a sharing of risk and reward, and like we're in this together. And yeah.
And then on the flip side of that is the network. So the network of other businesses, the knowledge and experience that we can sit and communicate and tap into their processes, where they are in their journey, and learn from them. So the value of those relationships that we're able to build just within the Growth Partner network is phenomenal. And obviously me and my senior leadership team now sitting around the table with my board, making these decisions about where we're going with the business, how we're navigating that, what and when we're doing it, and who that involves, and who our next key hires are.
Yeah.
So I never really had key people in the business that I've got now until I took Growth Partner on, because I knew I needed people, but it's like, who do I need first?
Yeah.
What do I do? Because
what order and what
I'd got the business to a point where we were still growing. We still would have grown, but it's strategically now, this is what I need to think of, and then it all becomes time. But I'm just like, I just want everything to happen this.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, and as somebody that has just been that go-getter for 20 years, that just, let's not waste time talking about it. Let's just crack on and do it.
Yeah.
It's that talking about it that still frustrates me. It's like, why are we talking about this 6 months down the line? We should have been doing it 3 months ago.
Yeah.
But this is the challenge that you face now when you have that mentality and energy. It's like, no, it's the hedgehog strategy that we use very much in the Growth Partner. And obviously as in our business is like, I'm the fox that are just out there hunting what I need to hunt. And obviously everyone else in the business now is the hedgehogs that are like sticking the prickles up and like, no, Vicky, we need to do it this way.
So That's really good to hear that it's been such a positive experience. And you mentioned hiring key people, that they kind of helped give you the push to do that. One of those key people is a chair.
Yeah.
And we work with a lot of businesses who are either preparing for or going through their first significant investment round. They're often, if they're entrepreneurs, nervous about that loss of control to an investor. And they're also have been tipped off at some point that there'll be a chair hire as part of that. And we're very fortunate that we often get to help them hire a chair. But there is often a lot of nervousness about that as well. If they're a self-made entrepreneur, they haven't ever had that relationship before, and they're not... Quite often they're quite cynical about what it might add to them in their business. I know my business, what do I need a chair for? That kind of attitude. So interested to hear how you found having a chair. We were very pleased to help you find that chair. And now that you've been working with a chair for a couple of years, what your experience is of that?
I think it's been absolutely great. And I think the key was to choose the right person that you can have a great working relationship with and an understanding. And our chair, Tracy Lewis, she's phenomenal. So she's
really is phenomenal. Founded
and scaled up and exited businesses. So I aspire to be Tracy in the future. And I think the benefit that I have with Tracy is the businesses she's involved with now as chair for others, working with us, and businesses that she really developed, and from a growth point of view, have serviced women. And I think that overlap of sector and product and delivery can really help in decision making when you just understand what your customer wants.
Yeah.
And
going back to your origin story, that was the key ingredient when you started the business, that you understood the consumer. So I suppose for you to have a chair that you have a real bond with, you need to sense that they do as well.
Yeah. And obviously throughout that whole recruitment process, when you get to meet a number of people, initially I met Tracy on a video call.
That was cool.
And I'm so glad we went on to actually enjoy that, to have a personal one face-to-face as well, secondary, because we met so many other people. And I really feel as though, for me, that face-to-face meeting was the conversion for me.
Yeah.
So for the benefit of founders who haven't had the opportunity to work with a chair, what does your relationship with Tracy sort of look like each week, each month? How does it, what's the dynamic? How do you communicate with each other? What's the practical experience of it?
Minimum 3 times a week, easy. I mean, I've been chatting with Tracy on emails this morning on my way up here. I communicate with Tracy more than anybody. So obviously apart from my team internally, but even from growth partner. So if anything that we're working on at my level, Tracy is my coach, my guide, my sense check, anything that I need or to discuss before we take it anywhere else, it's with Tracy.
Yeah. And
I think the fact that you're on the same page really helps, because that makes that communication so much easier.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to relationship, personalities, how you can work together.
So Tracy's obviously got vast experience, and yeah, we all aspire to have careers like Tracy. But it is the personal relationship that you think, I would like to think most chairs presented have the expertise and success story, but for you, it's finding that personal dynamic is the secret ingredient.
Because even then, when we were going through that initial process, it's like, oh my God, like if Richard or Alex or somebody else around the table, and they all disagree with me because they just don't get what I mean. And then it's like, okay, the chair decides. It's a 50-50 risk.
Yeah.
Do you know? And it's like, are you going to get that pushback, or are they going to agree? But I think it's never been about that. And I think in the decisions that we've made, it's been influenced by experience rather than, okay, this is what we done and we know that didn't work.
Yeah.
And especially in the US, scaling up in the US or other territories globally, if you've worked in businesses and you've got that experience where you've tried, tested, and you know what works, what doesn't, or what the audience really want, then you can bring that into that decision making, and it isn't going to be a case of you just don't understand it, you're flipping a coin. You're doing it from a business sense. You're really doing it from a broader sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Tracy has, and that's what she's really brought into the business and helped me, for us as a whole team, to deliver what we want from a planning point.
Just to pick up on one thing you mentioned there, our last guest, Mark, talked a lot about how he had sort of evolved his business to become very US market centric. What's your sort of current status trading over in the States, and what's the level of ambition in America?
There's loads of ambition because it's a huge opportunity. So the American hair market is the biggest in the world. It is currently serviced by some big players that are all owned by the same private equity company.
Okay.
So whether the customers know that or not, I think it's probably a lot more common knowledge now than it was a couple of years ago. And if you feel disadvantaged from one of those brands, you're only going to feel the same disadvantage from another one under their umbrella. So I feel as though at the minute there's a huge opportunity for us to go in and really sweep up those customers that they've let down, because they are putting profits before people and quality and things like that. And that's what Remy Cachet really delivers to that market. So we're already in the US. We've worked in the US for the last 6 years in a different space. We had a distributor. We've no longer got that distributor relationship, because we feel as though for us to direct that business in a way that we need that delivering and managing, it has to be under our full control.
Yeah.
So now we've taken full ownership back of that scale up in the US and targeting specific areas via exhibitions. So we're strictly B2B there, which helps as well when you're dealing with so many different states and taxes and everything like that. So that's what we're currently navigating right now. So
encouraging signs?
Yes, definitely encouraging. Like I say, we've already got some brand awareness there. There was a lot of work to do before we went and took that back over, which started in June. It's all very infancy for that full takeover, because that just triggered on June the 2nd this year with us exhibiting in Orlando. So we're back in the exhibition space. I hadn't been there since 2017 when I last exhibited in the US. And we've had some brand awareness growth there, but not in a way that we can really invest in that ourselves. So that's what we're doing right now. The American market's very different. Different expectations, different delivery, different relationships that you build with trade professionals. And words and terminology we use in this industry here aren't used there, and you have to just understand their expectations as well. But what we did identify through all our research is quality is obviously quality again. They're not bothered about what they're spending on something as long as they're getting the quality.
Okay.
So you really think that you're going to service a huge sector by going in low budget, let's undercut, let's sell because the price point is going to deliver, and the price point is an attraction. But when you're creating a premium brand and you want to maintain that premium level, you can't undersell yourself. You have to go in with that premium price point. You're only impacting your own bottom line from a profit point because you're investing in high quality manufacturing. And you just can't underservice yourself in that respect. So you go in at that level and you're going to attract the premium clients you want to work with.
Yeah. Fascinating.
That's the trick.
So I suppose away from, but including America, you talked before about you work in 5-year increments. So what's your 5-year plan at the minute, and beyond that, what's your ambition for additional lengths?
The long-term ambition is like the global #1 trade professional brand for Remy Cachet. So the next 5 year is going to really focus on that US drive and growth.
That's key to that.
We can service everything from the UK right now. We hope to make our first US hire within the next 6 months, possibly, definitely within the next 12 months. So that's going well as to who that is at the moment. From a distribution point, no one in the US expects next day delivery because the landscape is so huge. We can get to New York and Florida next day with UPS from the UK. We can get to LA within 2 to 3 days delivery, which is a lot of what the businesses that are supplying them now are still all offering. So we can do everything from the UK. And then I think the goal within the next 5 years is scale it, copy and pasting what we do so well here and pasting it over there on the ground. What and where are we going to potentially pitch our distribution house there?
Yeah. And when you think about that next 5 years of growth and all the opportunity that exists in the States, and then you compare to how you feel about the next 5 years to the first 5 years, do you feel as, I don't know, enthused, energetic, excited about these 5 years as the ones right back at the start?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like if you treat it as a startup, it's like if you look at what you've done with nothing to now, and then go and do that again somewhere else.
But
it's sort of like
with more resources this time.
Yeah. It's a new challenge and opportunity. I don't actually see challenges as challenges. I see them as opportunities, and I think this is just another opportunity to expand in a different territory that can then really service what we do elsewhere in the world. Like we have a big market in Australia, actually.
Okay.
Australia is actually our third or fourth biggest territory to supply goods.
What about Europe?
Yeah, we supply across Europe as a whole. Got some big customers in the Netherlands, France.
So it's not all in the US. That's the biggest market.
It's not
but
all.
There is
it's not all US. It's just that's the
global
biggest.
Domination is in the plan.
That's the biggest area to focus on that timeline with really pivotal growth and success, because it's a bit of a David versus Goliath thing, especially with the other companies and ownership that's there at the moment. And they can't control us. We are going into service and deliver to a trade professional audience that they are massively underestimating at the moment. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, great. And then for you personally, you talked about how jam-packed your weeks are and about how you're very happy when Friday evening comes around. What do you think the future looks like for you and your role in the business as the business goes to the next level? And we've talked about kind of getting comfortable with delegating and bringing more experienced team in. Where do you see yourself spending your time and adding the most value in the business?
Definitely more on a creative side, because obviously that's where we are today. I feel like there's, in terms of that global success, because I haven't been there and done it, we need to think about bringing somebody into the business that can deliver that and also do everything that I'm unable to do. Who that is at the moment, I don't know, but I can't be everywhere at once.
No.
And at the minute, things are getting compromised with my time.
Yeah.
I can't be CEO, but be content queen and creative director in this space, and also be very much still involved with product development, because that's my skill set.
Going into new markets.
And I need to be in America. I need to be wherever the business needs me to be. And at the helm of it, from a strategic point and a leadership point, you need to be there managing the team, and then there's compromises and impacts there that just really impact the time.
Yeah.
And that's becoming a strain at the moment. So I think the key is to find people and bring them into the business to deliver what you can't. And you've got to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you aren't, you're only holding the business back again, because you're still spinning so many plates. That is impossible.
Yeah. And then for you personally, you've been through an incredibly successful high growth story, and it sounds like that's going to continue into the future. How do you personally deal with the pressures of that? What do you do outside of work to switch off? Do you switch off, or do you carry it with you everywhere? I don't
think anyone in my position ever switches off. It's impossible, and you don't understand that unless you're in those boots, really. I like to switch off just by watching TV or going out, socialising, spending time with my family and friends. And you're never disconnected from your phone. So if you see something pop up, that's an email, like 24/7, you're overwhelmed with that.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I like to be in the know. And I suppose it's you just learn to become that person where that's part and parcel. And you still have to have some element of balance. But unfortunately, there's no get out clause with this role.
No.
We do not pass go, we do not collect £200. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, this is what you signed up for. So this is just what you have to accept.
Yeah.
And I'm not one to throw the towel in.
No.
Yeah.
So the thing with we had a nice gentleman came into our business last week and was talking to the guys about sort of self-care and well-being in the workplace. Do you have any sort of routines, any disciplines, any things that you do to make sure that you can keep your emotional and everything else energy up all the time for all the things you need to do?
I think this is what I'll probably use my weekends for. Like, I like a little lie-in on a Sunday. 8 o'clock is me lie-in. Depends what I've got on. But then, in most cases, my weekends are impacted by events or work or travel, especially when you're exhibiting all over the place as well. So I think for me is just sitting and doing nothing. Because I'm 100 miles an hour. Like, if there's a draft in the office, it's probably me walking past the desks, going to the kitchen to make a cuppa. But it's having that sit down and relaxing time. To be fair, I don't really do anything that I feel like I don't go to spas or I don't go and get a massage because I don't have time. I'd rather use my time more productively. And if I'm sat at home just with the telly on, I feel as though that's my rest.
Sure, relaxation.
That's my relaxation, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There will come a time, hopefully, where I'm like, maybe he's only working 3 days, and I get those other days to have that time. But for now, I still feel like I've just got so much to give. And the minute you start slacking on your energy levels, you just get trapped into that momentum, and it's like, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, keep it up. The more you stay energized, the more it creates energy.
Yeah.
So you just got to stay in that mindset. Yeah. It's a difficult one to answer because I don't really find as though I do it. Like,
no, I guess the question comes from, we speak to all sorts of different people who've got sort of mindfulness routines. They sort of meditate, they get up and get an ice bath in the morning.
Go for a run.
Yeah. But keep it simple.
I can't meditate to save my life because I'm thinking, I'm doing this, I have to do this. I'm thinking of all of the things in my diary. I'd rather just be productive with my thought process. And I don't want to overwhelm my thought processing anymore. And that, for me, I feel would be agitated. I'd be agitated if I was sat somewhere and something really important hit my desk or hit my emails that was an emergency and I had to react. I think this is the thing, is the reaction point of it. Those reaction points that you have to have as a CEO can impact that downtime, and then you just don't enjoy the downtime. So what's the point in having it?
Well, it comes back to just knowing yourself and knowing what works for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And not adopting someone else's model.
Yeah, I know what works for me, and it's 100 miles an hour.
and occasionally watch a bit of TV to switch off.
Yeah. I get distracted when I've got me. And you know, I don't just watch random TV. I tape things that I'm interested in and I watch them when I'm sat there and got time. Fast forward all the adverts because I don't have time for that.
So what sort of things do you choose?
I like Game of Thrones. I like, what am I watching at the minute? I'm watching Your Mum, My Dad at the minute, I think.
Okay.
On is it Netflix? And I don't know. I'm taping some things. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then we ask all our guests the same final question, which is, if you could give your younger self, Victoria setting out in business, one piece of advice, what would that be?
Don't be afraid to delegate sooner.
Okay.
lose the reins a little bit and bring key people into the business to share that responsibility sooner than I did.
Yeah. So when you've made key hires, you've always thought, if I'd done that 6 months earlier, or if I'd done that 12 months earlier, that would have been a good idea.
Yeah, and I think the difficult thing is we don't all have a magic ball to know
No,
where
no.
the business is going to be. And you do things in line with where you feel as though you are at
You're
that
comfortable
stage.
with that risk-reward balance of the additional costs.
Yeah. You know you need it, but you just don't know where and when.
Yeah.
And the difficult thing that we found as a business for key hires was where we were located, especially when you want a specific skill set and you want to attract really key talent. And that was another thing that set us back, which obviously why we then had to explore our recruitment options outside of the region, really. And sometimes you just don't really know you need to think about that.
Yeah.
Because you do think more locality, and then who comes across in your network and bringing them into the business then. But just don't be afraid to grow, and don't be afraid of challenges. I mean, I'm somebody that's not personally afraid of most things, to be fair, but yeah.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. That was absolutely
Thank you.
fascinating. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've enjoyed it.
Good.